The film opens with Alice Harvey adrift in the mechanical rhythm of New York's publishing world, a world she once longed to be part of, now reduced to a series of hollow motions. She is an editorial assistant, but the title is a formality. Her days are spent sifting through manuscripts with disinterest, fetching coffee for senior editors, and nodding through meetings where her opinions go unrequested. The office hums with the energy of literary ambition, but Alice moves through it like a ghost, her presence barely registering. Her apartment mirrors this emotional limbo, cluttered with half-read books and unfinished bottles of wine, a space that feels transient despite years of occupancy. There's a notebook tucked in a drawer, its pages filled with old, abandoned writing, but she never opens it. When she does write, it's perfunctory editorial notes, words without passion. Even her romantic encounters are fleeting, devoid of intimacy, less about connection than distraction. Alcohol is her most consistent companion. Evenings blur into late-night drinks alone or with coworkers who don't notice how quickly she empties her glass. In these moments, the camera lingers on her face, the quiet desperation in her eyes suggesting a woman bracing against memories she refuses to name. Then comes the assignment that cracks the facade. Her boss hands her a manuscript by Emmett Weil, a celebrated author whose name sends a visible tremor through her. She accepts the task without protest, but her hands betray her, slightly unsteady as she takes the pages. The moment is charged with something unspoken, a silent recognition that this is more than just another edit. This opening sequence masterfully establishes Alice's present as a life half-lived. The direction avoids heavy exposition, instead relying on subtle details, the way she avoids eye contact when asked about her own writing, the way she lingers outside the office before entering, as if steeling herself. The lighting is cool, almost sterile, reinforcing her emotional detachment. Even the sound design plays a role. The muffled chatter of the city outside her apartment feels distant, as if she's insulated from the world around her. By the time the story shifts to her past, the audience already understands that Alice's present is a carefully constructed shell. Her professional stagnation isn't just career dissatisfaction. It's the symptom of something deeper, a wound that never healed. The assignment to work with Emmett isn't just inconvenient. It's an unwelcome excavation, forcing her to confront what or who turned her love of words into something she can no longer bear to face. This scene isn't just setup. It's the quiet unraveling of a woman who has spent years running from herself. And now the past has found her. The film slips into the past like a half-remembered dream, transporting us to a younger Alice, 15, full of restless creativity, her bedroom walls plastered with handwritten poems and dog-eared novels. This is a girl who carries a notebook everywhere, scribbling lines between classes, under cafe tables, in the passenger seat of her father's car. Words pour out of her with an urgency that feels like hunger. She isn't just a girl who likes to write. She needs to, the way others need oxygen. Her father, a literary academic, nurtures her talent with pride, but it's his old friend, the acclaimed novelist Emmett Weil, who becomes the sudden focus of her starry-eyed admiration. When Emmett visits their home, Alice watches him with the rapt attention of someone who has only ever known art from a distance, now face to face with its creator. He's charming in that effortless way of certain intellectuals. Warm laughter, a way of making even casual remarks sound profound. And when he takes an interest in her writing, asking to read her work, it feels like a door swinging open to a world she's only imagined. The scene glows with the golden hue of nostalgia, but there's an undercurrent of unease, something too eager in the way Emmett leans in when she reads aloud, something too practiced in his praise. Alice, too young to recognize the warning signs, soaks up his attention. This is the moment before the fracture. Her face alight with possibility, her voice steady as she shares her words, believing, as young artists do, that recognition is the same as respect. The contrast with present-day Alice is almost unbearable. Here, in the past, her hands don't shake when she holds her notebook. Here, she still believes in the alchemy of language, the idea that if she writes honestly enough, the world will make space for her. The tragedy isn't just what happens next. It's how brightly she burns in this moment, unaware of how thoroughly that light will be dimmed. The film doesn't linger on foreshadowing. It doesn't need to. The tension lies in the audience's dawning realization that we're witnessing the last time Alice Harvey ever trusted herself without reservation. By the time the scene fades, we already miss the girl she was, and we understand with terrible clarity why the woman she became can no longer bear to open a notebook at all. The publishing house hums with its usual mid-morning lethargy, clicking keyboards, the occasional murmur of editorial debate, the smell of stale coffee clinging to the air. Alice sits slumped in a conference room, mechanically taking notes as her boss drones on about upcoming projects. Her posture screams disengagement, her pen moving in lazy loops around the margins of her notebook rather than recording anything useful. Then, the name drops like a stone into still water. Emmett Weil. Her boss slides a manuscript across the table with an offhand remark about it needing a fresh editorial perspective. The title page stares up at her, Emmett's name printed in bold, unmistakable letters. The air in the room thickens. Alice's fingers hover just above the pages, not quite touching them, as if the manuscript might burn her. A co-worker makes a joke about how lucky she is to work with a literary heavyweight, but the words seem to reach her through fog. The camera lingers on her face, the slight tightening around her eyes, the almost imperceptible tremble of her lower lip, before she schools her expression into something neutral. She nods, says something non-committal like, "I'll get started right away," but her voice sounds foreign to her own ears. As she walks back to her desk, the manuscript tucked under her arm like a live grenade, the office noises fade into a muffled roar. This moment is a masterclass in quiet devastation. There are no flashbacks, no dramatic music cues, just the terrible ordinariness of trauma resurfacing in a professional setting. The audience watches as Alice's carefully constructed detachment begins to crack under the weight of this unwanted reunion. The manuscript isn't just a stack of papers. It's a key turning in a lock, opening a door she'd sealed shut years ago. What makes the scene so unsettling is its banality. To everyone else, it's just another day at work. But for Alice, it's the moment the past comes crashing into the present, demanding to be reckoned with. As she sits at her desk, staring at the first page without reading a single word, we understand. This assignment isn't just work. It's an unwelcome excavation, and Alice isn't sure she's ready for what digging up the past might unearth. The air in Emmett's study hangs thick with the scent of old books and something darker, the metallic tang of power shifting hands. 15-year-old Alice perches on the edge of an overstuffed chair, her notebook clutched to her chest like a shield. Emmett pours whiskey he knows she's too young to drink, his movements deliberate, theatrical. "All great writers need to learn to live dangerously," he says with a wink, pushing the glass toward her. The ice cubes clink like warning bells. At first, his attention feels like a blessing. He reads her stories with performative reverence, underlining passages with a fountain pen that leaves permanent ink stains on the page. His compliments come wrapped in literary theory. You write like Plath with the volume turned up, he murmurs, watching how the comparison makes her blush. But the lessons gradually shift from craft to something more intimate. He begins critiquing not just her writing, but her. The way she bites her lip when thinking, how her skirt rides up when she curls her legs beneath her on the chair. The manipulation unfolds in slow motion, each scene a turn of the screw. Emmett isolates her from friends with carefully placed doubts. They don't understand artists like we do. He coaxes out her most private journal entries under the guise of authentic art. When she hesitates, he plays wounded. I thought you were serious about your talent. The camera lingers on Alice's face as she pieces together that this isn't mentorship anymore, but can't quite name what it's becoming. The pivotal moment comes bathed in golden afternoon light that feels like a lie. Emmett leans in to correct her posture at the typewriter, his breath hot on her neck as his hands slide from her shoulders down her arms. The scene holds its breath, Alice frozen, recognizing this is wrong, but paralyzed by the fear that protesting might cost her his approval, her big break, her very identity as a writer. When she finally gives in, it's not with passion, but with the quiet resignation of someone who's been outmaneuvered. What devastates isn't just the act itself, but the theft that accompanies it. Afterward, Emmett flips through her notebook with proprietary ease, marking up her most vulnerable passages with red pen. This could be something special, he says, with my guidance. The unspoken truth hangs in the air. He's no longer just taking her body, but claiming her voice, her stories, her very sense of self. The girl who entered this room believing in the purity of art leaves understanding its darkest truth, that for some, talent isn't something to nurture, but to consume. The flashback doesn't show graphic violation. The horror lies in the systematic dismantling of a young artist's trust in herself. By the time physical lines are crossed, we understand the real crime happened pages earlier, in every carefully planted doubt, every backhanded compliment, every time Emmett made her believe exploitation was mentorship. When we cut back to present-day Alice staring at his manuscript, we now see the invisible ink staining every page, the ghost of everything he took from her. The fluorescent glow of Alice's desk lamp pools over Emmett's manuscript like an interrogation light. The office has long since emptied, the rhythmic tick of the wall clock the only witness to her quiet undoing. At first, she reads with professional detachment, red pen hovering, until a particular turn of phrase stops her cold. Her breath catches. The sentence is lifted almost verbatim from a diary entry she'd written at 15, one she'd shared with Emmett during those humid summer afternoons in his study. Her fingers trace the words as if testing their reality. Page after page reveals stolen fragments, her adolescent metaphors about drowning reframed as literary profundity, the raw confession of her first kiss repurposed as a protagonist's backstory. The manuscript becomes a funhouse mirror, reflecting distorted versions of her most vulnerable moments, dressed up in Emmett's signature lyrical prose. A half-empty wine glass sits forgotten as she flips faster, the margins blurring, until she reaches a chapter where the fictional stand-in for her teenage self is described with unsettling intimacy. The camera stays tight on Alice's face as the realization dawns. This isn't just plagiarism, it's a second violation. He's taken the pain he caused and monetized it, turned her stolen innocence into another critically acclaimed novel. A choked sound escapes her, not quite a sob, not quite a laugh, as she slams the manuscript shut. The impact sends her pen rolling off the desk, the clatter echoing through the empty office like a gunshot. In the bathroom's flickering light, Alice scrubs her hands with mechanical intensity, the water scalding. Her reflection in the mirror shows a stranger, dark circles under bloodshot eyes, lipstick smeared from where she's been chewing it off. The corporate setting makes the breakdown more devastating. There are no dramatic outbursts, just the silent shattering of a woman realizing she's been complicit in her own erasure. When her phone buzzes with an email from Emmett, "Looking forward to your edits," the mundane cruelty of it all hits like a sucker punch. This scene's power lies in its restraint. There's no score swelling to cue our emotions, just the hum of the office HVAC and the occasional distant elevator ding. The true horror emerges in the quiet spaces between Alice's rapid blinking, in how her professional demeanor fractures but doesn't completely collapse. We understand in this moment that Emmett didn't just steal her past. He's been profiting from her silence all these years. And now, holding this manuscript heavy with her ghosted words, Alice finally sees the full cost of that silence. The confrontation doesn't happen in some dramatic, storm-lit showdown. It unfolds in the sterile glow of a high-end restaurant, all crisp linens and clinking silverware, where Emmett holds court like the literary royalty he believes himself to be. Alice arrives not with fire, but with a quiet, trembling resolve, her hands clenched around the manuscript pages she's marked up with more red ink than actual text. At first, he doesn't even recognize her. Not really. To him, she's just another editor, another face in the long line of people who exist to serve his genius. He greets her with that same practiced charm, the same easy smile that once made her feel chosen. But when she slides the manuscript toward him, her notes bleeding into the margins like wounds, something shifts. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't cry. She simply points to a passage, her passage, word for word from a diary entry she'd written at 15, and asks softly, "Do you remember where this came from?" The silence that follows is deafening. Emmett's smile doesn't falter, but his eyes flicker, just for a second, with something like recognition. And then, the gaslighting begins. Art borrows from life, Alice. You know that. He leans in, condescending, almost amused. If you're upset, maybe you're not cut out for this industry. But Alice doesn't flinch. For the first time in years, her voice doesn't shake. You didn't borrow, she says. You took. And you knew exactly what you were doing. The scene's power lies in its quiet devastation. There's no grand speech, no cinematic outburst, just a woman finally speaking a truth she's buried for over a decade, and a man who still can't, or won't, acknowledge the damage he's done. When Alice stands to leave, Emmett doesn't try to stop her. He just watches her go, then signals the waiter for another drink. The real victory isn't in his remorse, because there is none. It's in Alice walking away, finally free from the need for his apology. She doesn't get justice, but she does get herself back. The final act unfolds not with fanfare, but in the quiet, golden hour glow of Alice's apartment, now stripped of its clutter, the air lighter, as if exhaling for the first time in years. The manuscript from Emmett lies discarded in the recycling bin, its pages crumpled like shed skin. On her desk, instead of editorial notes, sits a fresh notebook, its spine uncracked, its pages blank with possibility. Alice hesitates only for a moment before pressing pen to paper. The first sentence comes haltingly, then faster, as if something long damned has finally broken free. The words are raw, unpolished, hers in a way nothing has been since she was 15. Outside, the city hums on, indifferent, but in this room, the act of writing feels revolutionary. She doesn't write about Emmett. She writes around him, through him, past the girl who believed her voice only mattered when validated by a man's approval. The prose is messy, alive with the kind of unchecked emotion she'd learned to edit out of herself. When her hand cramps, she doesn't stop. When the wine bottle sits unopened beside her, the significance isn't lost on us. The scene's power lies in its lack of grand gestures. There's no triumphant montage, no publisher swooping in to offer a book deal, just a woman at a desk reclaiming the thing that was stolen from her, not through vengeance, but through the simple, radical act of creation. By the time dawn bleeds through the curtains, Alice is asleep atop her pages, ink smudged on her cheek like a battle scar. The notebook remains open, its words breathing into the room, no longer a ghost, but a living thing. In this quiet finale, the film whispers its hardest truth. Healing isn't about erasing the past, but learning to speak alongside it. Alice may never get her old self back, but in these pages, she's finally meeting who she's become. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.